Hey, good evening, everybody. Welcome back to our Zoom Daily with Rabbi Shlomo Schwartz to a realistic map of meaning, where we've been reading his notes on his 199 relevant mitzvot and just beautiful stuff. And I think we're going to wind it up tonight. So let's just hand it over to the rabbi and see where he wants to take it from there. So,
Okay.
Shalom, Rabbi Schwartz. You're live on the air. We're going to turn the class over to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Dan. Hello, everybody, especially to Rabbi and Ronald. And I'm going to share the screen with the chart. No, that's not the one. I stopped that. We missed it. I aimed wrong. Which one is it? Here it is. Okay, there you go. Okay, so it's up on the screen. And um, last night I was talking about do not eat the sinew of the thigh vein, and I felt that that's one aspect of kosher. Jews that keep kosher, they never have I think it's a T-bone steak, because that's from the place where the sinew is. Unless unless you perhaps are in Israel, because apparently it's a very difficult. The sinew is what's prohibited, and if you're trying to take it out, which you can do, but it takes a big expert. It's a very arduous process, and takes a lot of time and expertise to do it. So it's just not worth it here in North America because there's so much meat available. In Israel, I once met one time when I was coming home from Israel on one occasion, I found myself sitting beside a veterinarian, and he was coming. It was an Israeli veterinarian. He was coming from Argentina, and I said, like, what'd you do in Argentina? He started explaining to me that all the meat in Israel comes from Argentina because they found out this was in the early days. This was back in the 70s, which was still early. It could still be true that they were so careful with their water that they found that they could whatever water they had, they could make more money off it by producing fruits and vegetables than by raising cattle. It's very water intensive to raise animals. So all the meat that was being consumed in Israel, perhaps to this day, is really raised outside the country and brought in. And what they do is they slaughter it in the foreign country, freeze it, and then bring it to Israel. So there's quite a bit of process going, and it's in their best interest that the animals are healthy and are productive there and so on. So they would send veterinarians over to Southern Cal. It was very interesting. I don't remember all the details he told me, but uh, that's the way it is. So in Israel, if they ever brought over, so it was worth their while to take out the sinew because it was anyways very expensive, and they would prefer to spend the time rather than waste the meat. Otherwise, what they do in North America is they just that part of the animal just gets butchered off the animal and given to the non-kosher product line, and they do what they want. It's just not worth it the other way. So that's an interesting tidbit. Um, that brings us to the next level. Number three is do not eat meat and milk cooked together. And the next one, do not cook meat together with milk. And the way this is phrased is there's three times in the Torah that the very same words are used. And because the same words are used, the rabbis, the oral explanation that goes along with it explains that it's dealing with three levels. The first level is don't do it. Don't cook meat together with milk. But the way it's phrased is do not kick a kid in his mother's milk. And it says that three times. Lo do not kick a kid in its mother's milk, um, three times. And so exactly the same words. So the first time it says, well, don't cook it. The second time it means that even if you cooked it, don't eat it. And the third time is to come and tell you that even though you're not eating it, you're not allowed to have any pleasure from it, any benefit from it. So if you cooked meat and milk together, and now it's a finished product. So what are you going to do? You can't eat it. Go sell it. No, you can't sell it. So you're not allowed to get any benefit from it. That's true of a Jew. Now, as I said before, these don't necessarily apply to non-Jews. Non-Jews are able to eat it. I don't know of anyone that says that they're forbidden. However, I'm pointing out that since the Torah um, said it 3 times, and there's no, whereas with kosher food and non-kosher food, it says, look, if an animal dies without the ritual slaughter, so then give that animal to the non-Jew. So you see that the Torah itself allowed for that. That's fine. Let's use it, but not you guys. But over here, the Torah seemed to be so particular that it repeated the same word 3 times in 3 separate places, and also stated it in such a descriptive of a picturesque way. A kid in its own mother's milk. Although it means any meat that's cooked in any milk is forbidden. So it would seem to me that since Torah, so it would be a nice option that someone who wants to be sensitive to what the Torah says, since it says 3 times, and there's no hint that it's to give it to a non-Jew, that we should. I don't know of any. I don't know. I don't know of any. I don't know of either. This is basically a cheeseburger, right? You're taking something made out of milk and cooking it together with the meat. There's a lot of recipes that call for a mixture of milk and meat, but so for Jews it's just not allowed. For non-Jews, I'm suggesting they may want to try without it. I'm not suggesting any health benefits. I'm just saying as a method of honoring God's word, of being cognizant of it, that the Torah apparently did not like this at all. It used such descriptive language. It repeated 3 times. It's forbidden to the nth degree, even to not get any benefit out of it. So it may be something you want to consider.
It's a big contradiction. It's a big contradiction. One gives life and one has had its life taken away. And if we start contradicting things,
the milk.
We could contradict things that God has asked us to do. We just don't want to start contradicting anywhere.
Right. It's sort of like defying nature, in a sense. And we had earlier in an earlier list, we had do not interbreed, graft trees together, try and produce a new kind of fruit, or don't mate animals out of their species, so on. So that's already forbidden. I've suggested that also is something that would be of interest to non-Jews, to stay within the confines of nature, just out of respect for how God set it up. Now, I also want to mention that the Jewish people are so concerned about this because of the 3 levels that they have introduced even stricter rules. So they don't, not only don't cook them together, but they will not eat them together, and particularly meat, which is considered to be longer lasting in the mouth. It gets caught between the teeth, and it's like a heavier type meal, so it's sort of it keeps you full longer, that kind of idea. So most Jews will not, all Jews will not eat, not only will not eat milk together, they won't eat milk after eating meat until an interval of time has passed. Usually, for the most part, it's 6 hours. There are some that only keep 3 hours, and there's even some that keep 1 hour. But at least 1 hour. Everybody will keep at least 1 hour. They will not eat any milk after having consumed meat, just to honor, to make sure that they stay far, far away from this idea of mixing meat and milk together. So I'm not suggesting that would be necessary, but because the item itself is not, but to honor the idea, it would be something to at least stay away from cooking them together. Right, pepperoni on pizza, that would be the same thing. Yes. So we have pizza shops, kosher pizza shops, and at best you'll find that they've, when they came out with the vegetarian meats, we were the first to try it. That's where the market was. They wanted to treat what was a real pizza like, So they concocted these vegetarian pepperoni slices and so on, and okay, it made a difference. I don't know if it tastes like the real thing or not, um, but certainly a pizza with pepperoni, that would be same thing because you're cooking the meat and the milk together. So
Yeah,
so I guess they
I
would
can't.
not go over big in Italy.
Yeah, well, I can't sort of get my head around do not cook meat in milk. Who would? I suppose you sort of just answered it partially then, but I think of that and I wince. I thought, how would you and why would you? You know, meat gets steamed, fried, or roasted, but cooking. No, no, I cook the cream sauces and everything else is cooked in water and then the two are added, but never cooked together. Yeah, I suppose you've opened my eyes a little bit to it because I just sort of imagine like a leg of lamb sitting in a pot of milk and think, how disgusting.
That's so Ronald, you're saying you're naturally disgusted by the idea of cooking the two together. So just
Well, in the way I just mentioned, you meat like in a pot with milk, and I can't. It's the only way I've been able to see it, and I think that's disgusting.
but just,
And I've mixed the two, but I've never cooked the two together. Yeah, I've mixed the two, like as Dan said, with like a pasta dish, a carbonara, but I've never sort of get my head around. You know, my mind always goes to a pot of milk with a piece of meat tossed into it, you know, some silverside or a leg of
that,
lamb or something, and I just sort of think, how could you cook it in milk? It's
okay.
wild.
So that's what the Torah is getting at, is that it should be counterintuitive, or something to not get indulged in. You can plenty of fine food without doing that. So that's something you may want to check into, to be careful in your diet. You're doing it only because out of respect for the Torah law, not that the Torah
Yeah,
said you have to. It's not. I'm not
I'm
saying
not
that.
obligated. No,
Uh,
bad
but
respect.
you want to take cognizance of what God's statements. So that would be a respectful position to take. The next one is, we've already discussed in the preamble. Don't take a chicken or an egg. The chick, not the chicken. A chick or an egg. In other words, if the egg is hatched or if the egg's still being nurtured, before sending away the mother. In other words, you're allowed to send it and send away the mother bird. So there's two parts. Don't take it without sending away the mother, and do send away the mother, and then you can take the egg or the chick. And I discussed this before, but I wanted to point out that I wanted to emphasize, I did mention this before, this is only with regard to birds that you happen upon. They're not prepared you're not raising them for the food. These are situations where you happen upon them in the wild, or just, well, I'll give you another scenario. It happened to me once. I was doing some property management of an apartment building, and somebody vacated the apartment, and so we had to go in to see what we're going to have to clean up and get ready to rent it out again. And so my son-in-law was working with me at the time, and he noticed. He said, "There's a pigeon nest on the balcony." So okay, so there's a pigeon nest on the balcony. We'll clean it up. He says, "No, no, we have the mitzvah." I completely never it's not something that comes across. So it happens by accident, and that's one of the points I want to get to. So, but at any rate, so we phoned up the rabbi, because I've never done this before. We phoned up the rabbi, and we found out how to do it, and it was very not a very complicated task. We didn't have to really take anything. He said, just wave your hand, have the mother fly away, and then you can take the egg if you want, or you can leave it there if you want, but you've done the mitzvah, you've done what's wrong. So it's just like a very sort of ritualistic. It doesn't really result in anything necessarily, but that is a mitzvah in the Torah. So it makes me think that, well, certainly, there's probably the mother's gonna fly away as soon as somebody approaches, anyways. But the idea is just to go through these motions to make sure the mother flies away before you take it, or you can walk away. You were just the agent that separated the two for a bit. And then only by accident. I mean, if you're raising chickens, so then you go in and take the eggs. You don't have to shoo all the whole coop of chickens. There's could be 1,000 hens in that barn laying eggs. You don't have to shoo them all out to take the eggs. That's all expected. So it's talking about something in the wild. So in other words, an accident happened. Something happened that you didn't expect. How does that happen? God arranges it. God arranges that there's this situation. So God is giving you an opportunity to do a mitzvah, just to and there's all kinds of promises that go along with this. That you'll get long life, you'll build a new house, you'll have wonderful children, etc. Just for doing this mitzvah. So the rabbis say, look, if we're doing something so simple and you didn't prepare for it, you just happened to it and you remember and you did it the right way. So the Torah promises, not that maybe this life. This is a promise from God. You'll have a long life and build a new house, etc. So how much bigger reward is in store for you for all the things that are a little more difficult to do, that you have to prepare to do, that you had to work hard to make sure you had everything arranged. So it's just sort of like a lesson in life. Again, you can't test God. You never know. Somebody could have done this and earned all kinds of wonderful things, and then thrown them away with some terrible act they did the day after. But normally speaking, this will bring wonderful benefits, and it's a lesson to what can happen from keeping the other mitzvahs that are all the more difficult, and that accidents don't happen. We don't believe accidents happen. Everything that happens to you happened by God's design, and this is an opportunity to gain something. So you have to learn about it in order to be aware of it and to gain the benefit, and that's part of the reason why we learn things. Going on to the next one, did not muzzle an ox while it was working. It's cruel. And so it's working on the thing, and it wants to stop and eat. You're not preventing it. Not the right way. Now, you speak to people who work with animals, they're just normal. They're always yanking. I remember riding a horse. The horse won't stop and graze, and you're yanking it away to do it. I don't know if you're allowed to do that. It may be not working for you. It's just carrying you. It's an entertainment. I don't even know how you would work that. And this may be while it is working on the produce that it is, like we had with a human. When they're working on the produce, they're allowed to eat from it. So the same thing with the ox, should be allowed to. So don't muzzle it. So that's one of those mitzvahs. And in a similar vein, do not plow with an ox and donkey together. Obviously, the ox is much, much stronger than a donkey, and you're pitting one against the other. You're putting them into competition. It's unfair, and it's onerous on the weaker animal. So we're told. So this is another mitzvah of that type. Now, let's say you had a strong donkey and a weak ox. We still wouldn't do it because we don't say, well, we know what it's all about, and therefore we can do it in this way. That's what King Solomon did. The Torah said, do not take a lot of wives because they will lead you into idol worship, talking to a king. So King Solomon, who was the wisest man of all, and we went through this in the text earlier, who was the wisest man of all, he said, well, now that you told me why not to do it, I'll be doubly careful, and I'll take the wives, and I won't allowed myself to get into idol worship. Sure enough, the smartest man in the world is not going to outsmart God. If God said this is what's going to happen, that's what's going to happen, and he got dinged. Now, he didn't really worship idols himself. His wives wound up doing idols, but he's responsible for them, so it was counted as if he did it. The point is, though, that the Torah gave a reason, so right away people say, oh, I'm smart enough to escape that reason. No, you're not. And so for most of the time, Torah does not give a reason, not to entice us into trying to outsmart it. This is the law, and you have to follow the instructions. Otherwise, it ain't going to work out well. You can trust that. So whatever the situation is, we do not plow with two different size species working together. And number 10 in this list, do not eat like a wayward and rebellious son. Now, I don't have all the details here in front of me, but this goes back to a mitzvah that some say was never even possible to implement, because the Torah, there's a famous passage, Torah, that if you have a wayward and a rebellious son, the parents come and bring him to the court will kill him if he satisfies all the conditions. What did he do so terrible? He ate like a drunk, he drank like a drunkard, and he ate like a glutton, and even though his parents told him not to. So, okay, must have been in college. This happens all the time. But we're talking about a very particular act. He had a certain amount, was a huge amount, and drink a huge amount, and all in one day. And both his mother and his father had to say, "Don't do this," and they had to do it with the same voice. And if one is louder than the other, it doesn't count. And if one said it one day and the other one said another day, it doesn't count. There's so many conditions that the rabbis say, "Look, this never could have happened. You're never going to satisfy all these conditions, and witnesses have to come and say, we told him, we saw the parents warn him, and we saw he went ahead and did it anyway, so we warned them, we're going to take you to court and kill you." And he said, nevertheless, all this, it's crazy, a crazy scenario. So it's a model that, for me, the way I interpret it is not that we should not allow people to start behaving in very undisciplined way and think they'll grow out of it or something. We have to step in and guide them to a better path, because it's going to wind up really bad, even though this never happened. But there's a message there that's left to us. And that message is only valid if we learn about the rule, because it's never going to happen. So you have to learn about it. And I think that it's just as learnable or teachable to anybody. It's not a Jewish thing. It's every person has a teenage son, especially the sons. They get quite rebellious. And by the way, I don't think it wouldn't apply to a daughter, because there's only mention of son. So that's another one of the conditions in that case. So it's sort of a lesson, and the lesson applies to everybody. And that means, to my way of thinking, that you have to learn about it rather than actually perform it, because it certainly wouldn't apply to non-Jews. They wouldn't be able to convene a court to do this on this particular item. So that's the last one on this list of do not eat a limb from my live animal, which I take to mean these are chokes, what's called chokes. It's a non-rational thing. It doesn't make sense, or it doesn't really work out in real life, but it teaches us a lesson, or at the very least, it gives us something that God said do, and do it just because God said to, and you want to conform, you want to align yourself with God's thinking, whether you have to or not. It's always best to align yourself with God's thinking, and even if He didn't have you in mind particularly, but it can't hurt. So I've included all these 10 lists, and they come up to 199 altogether, and that is the end of my list. And now that's the end of my text. So now I have, I'm not going to ask you directly, but I'm going to invite you to send me a comment if you like. I've been thinking, I'm trying to prepare this book for publication, so I've gone through this. Having gone through this list, I went through the list because I mentioned the 199 mitzvahs, and I thought, well, is that too much of a tease? Shouldn't I list them? So here I've only written them out. I've only identified the source verse and just the title of the mitzvah, but you can see that each one needs a little discussion about it, which is not in the text. So I've been thinking of actually stopping the text earlier for the book's purposes, which in other words, not having the appendix, and maybe just including a few more messages inside the text, where I did talk about idol worship and respecting parents and so on. So in terms of relationships, because the main thrust of the book was on how really the entire Torah is giving us rules of behavior that will only guide us and assist us in creating the right kind of relationships with each other. Not always loving, not always, everything you do is okay. Sometimes you have to criticize. Sometimes you have to compete. Sometimes, especially in gaining wisdom, it's always good to compete in gaining wisdom. You're entitled to to negotiate business deals and so on. So and look out for each other. That's the way the world works. So, but there's guidelines for doing each one of these things, and they will help you create your creations of positive relations with that, with each other, and with the world, and that just adds to God's creation, because the entire universe that God created is just a jumble of relationships between various entities, be they animated or not animated, with a soul, without a soul. Everything is in relation to everything else, and that's what makes them there. That's what gives them their existence, is that they have an effect on other things. So we have an effect on each other, and we can create these effects of our own making, and they're unique creations that we added to God's creation, and God, that's what God wanted. God's a creator. He's just fascinated with creating, and that's what the whole world is about. And then it goes. I'm assuming there'll be a world to come where that will go on on a much higher level, but we have to prepare ourselves in this world. So that's what the book was about. And if you have any thoughts on whether I should include the appendix or not include the appendix, I invite your emails to comment on that. And before we started the lesson, we were talking about what to do next, and then suggested a series of lectures
material.
from Cult material, which is famous rabbi that lived not that long ago, who
a couple 100 years ago.
Yeah. So in the great scheme of things, I was thinking of doing. I'm a big fan of Rambam. The whole book was based on teachings of the Rambam, and the very first thing I wrote was something on the Rambam, which does pertain to everybody in the world, and that is the instructions on giving charity. And so one of the possibilities I'm looking at is to discuss those rules. There's 4 chapters that Rambam wrote about doing this. And when I went to describe it, what happened was, when my father passed away, my father died young, first of all, and he was a very highly beloved. People thought he was a tycoon, or how many people showed up at the funeral, because he had so many connections. He was a very generous-hearted fellow. Never had a lot of money, but would give you anything he had. So I looked for. I was going to talk. I wanted to describe those ideas of generosity, of doing people favors, and I couldn't find something that I could work from at the time, and so then I found the charity in the Rambam. So I decided, okay, that's as close as I'm going to get, and I started analyzing it, what the Rambam said. I had the idea. Actually, I didn't start analyzing it. What I wanted to do is I'll put together something that doesn't exist yet, because there's various, let's say, eras, generations of Torah teaching. The first one is the Torah. That was the first written thing. Later, the Talmud was written down. That was the oral Torah. The oral instruction explains everything. That was finally written down in the Talmud. Later, Rambam wrote his magnum opus to reorder everything in a organized fashion, because the Talmud tried to maintain the oral nature of the discussion, which means, while you're discussing one thing, you start discussing something else that's related, and then another thing that's related, and before you know it, you've got the same material being referred to in all over the place, in different ways, because everything's related to everything else, because that's the way God created the universe. So the Rambam organized everything into one place on each subject. And then a couple of 100 years later, a fellow by the name of Rabbi Yosef Cairo, big rabbi, actually before that, I'll get into more detail, but it was rewritten, just dealing with, Rambam wrote about everything, all 613 instructions, whether it dealt with the temple or everyday life and so on, everything was in there. This other fellow said, look, people just need something a little less scholarly and more practical, So he wrote a different order and just how do you conduct your day? How do you do this? How do you do that? Much more practical. And so I thought I would take and show how it developed from the Talmud, well, starting from the verse to the Talmud to the Rambam, and then what came after him, but all centered around the Rambam because his work is the most organized. And so I'm just taking them and finding the places and putting them together. But in so doing, that just juxtaposing different texts one with the other already raised many issues and questions in my mind, and I had to sit down and analyze and so on, start writing that up, and wound up with a little booklet on that. And thought it might be interesting to go through that. I'll go through I'll look at the Ramchal, I'll look at that, and I'll see, make a decision. And you're free to vote. If anybody wants to vote, and send me an email, it's sbs447@gmail.com. We'll convene again tomorrow night, anyways, and see what we get. All right, Dan?
All right, so we are on for tomorrow night.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, Rabbi, thank you so much for sharing that appendix with the 199 mitzvahs. I think it's beautiful material, especially the explanations. You were starting to get into some great flow. I did have somebody on the chat, Amy, was asking, "Hi, I'm new to this channel. Please forgive the question, but are Noahides encouraged to eat kosher?" And I said to her, not specifically, but certain kosher laws have benefits. I said, but it is not Noahide command. I said voluntary use of some of the mitzvahs.
Right.
Basically, yeah.
Well, tonight we covered that. It was mostly the sinew, the not to the right thigh, the thigh. That's one, and the other one is the meat and milk together.
Right, and just doing it because the text says so, and there's no restriction against doing such. But if Hashem thought it important enough to record, it has must have definite benefit for sure. So thank you. I really appreciate it. Robbie, Ronald, either of you guys have any comments or questions for the rabbi before we wind it down?
Just one on the taking of the egg and the chick. Basically, the egg in the wild. If you were to shoo the hen away and take the eggs from the nest, you'd be more inclined, or the probability of getting an egg with a partially developed chick in it. So I couldn't really see the logic in, unless you knew the egg was laid 10 minutes ago, that it hadn't started to create the chicken from the albumen and yolk. Well,
doesn't it have some sort of shock to the mother hen? I mean, the bird. I mean, you're stealing to the mother. You're stealing their babies, and their drive to procreate is, you don't want to get Mama Bear all upset, and I don't know. I just think it's a shocking event for the mother, and I think shooing it away is it's a thankful courtesy.
Oh yeah, I understand that side, but it's the actual taking of the egg. What value is that egg going to be if it's already, it might have a half-developed chick inside already. So you're not going to get a meal out of it. So you've wasted a new life that was to come, and that's what I said. Unless you knew the egg was sort of laid in the last 20 minutes, say, or hour, then the egg would still be an edible egg.
Eggs are a huge part of a Jewish diet, are they not, Rabbi?
Yes, but we're not talking about chickens, because chickens are bred to brood.
No, I'm talking about wild birds.
And with wild birds, we're only talking about kosher birds, number one, and number two, you weren't expecting it, so you just have to find something. So whether it's a chick or an egg, you could what's it called? Brood. Even though the mother's the one, you've taken it. If you wanted to get the chick, you could.
Yeah, I think there's an ocular piece that you can use to tell if it's developed or half developed or whatnot. And
you have to be closer to nature. I am too.
Yeah. I'm sure experts would know whether the egg is worth use or not, but I think if you're going to go into a hen house or a bird's nest, best to shoo it away before disturbing the nest.
I don't in a birdhouse. No, I don't think. There was like a barn where you're raising chickens. I don't think.
Well, no, but I mean, I think in the wild, you'd probably have certain types of birds that would probably turn on their own eggs if they thought they were tampered with.
Yeah, you get all kinds of, or they won't come near them afterwards.
Right.
The story was
You're dooming them
it was a
anyways.
pigeon. There was a pigeon. Pigeons are kosher birds, so it was a pigeon's nest, and we discerned, I took one and I broke it open. It didn't look so good. I didn't eat it.
Yeah, I think that was Ronald's point. Yeah.
I just wanted to see. I never had it. So I just
that was my point.
Yeah. So,
Robbie, you got any comments for Rabbi before we close down for the night? Or are you good?
I'm good. Thank you, Rabbi.
Well, we're always glad to have you guys with us. And if anybody else wants to join in the Zoom chat, you can email the rabbi at sbs447 at gmail.com. That's SamBobSam447 at gmail.com. And he'd be glad to add you to the Zoom link. So, Rabbi, we winding her down for tonight?
Yeah, we're done.
All right, folks. So we will be back tomorrow night at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific, and we're going to see what direction Rabbi Shlomo Schwartz wants to take. So till tomorrow, that's been our Zoom Daily for today with Rabbi Shlomo Schwartz to a realistic map of meaning. I look forward to hearing what new and exciting material he's got starting tomorrow night. So till then, have a wonderful, wonderful evening, everybody.
Be well.
Good night.